Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Scandal presented by Law and Crime. I am your host, Sierra Gillespie, and tonight we are diving deep into one of the most talked about stories in the country right now. We are talking about Taylor Frankie Paul, the Mormon mom influencer, the reality TV star, the woman who was supposed to be the next bachelorette on ABC. And tonight we are breaking down everything that has happened from the very beginning all the way to this week when the Salt Lake County District Attorney dropped a bombshell announcement that no charges will be filed against her. So buckle up because this story has everything: drama, a viral video, a canceled TV show, a custody battle, competing protective orders, and two people who both say they are the victim. Let us start from the very beginning, because if you do not know who Taylor Frankie Paul is, you need to understand her background before any of this makes sense. Taylor is a 31-year-old influencer and mother of three who lives in Draper, Utah. She first became famous on TikTok as one of the original creators of what people called Mom Talk. This was a group of Utah-based Mormon mothers who posted videos online about their lifestyle, their faith, their families, and their daily lives. Taylor quickly became the face of that group. She has 6.1 million followers on TikTok and 2.3 million followers on Instagram. That is a massive platform. And she used that platform to talk about her real life, including some very controversial things. Back in 2022, Taylor went live on TikTok and dropped a bombshell. She revealed that she and her then-husband Tate Paul had been participating in what some people call soft swinging. This means they were in an open relationship with other couples in their social circle. This announcement caused a huge scandal, especially inside the Mormon community, where that kind of lifestyle is absolutely not accepted. Shortly after that revelation, Tate Paul filed for divorce. Their split was very public and very messy, and it played out right in front of her millions of followers online. Taylor and Tate shared two children together, an 8-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old son. After her divorce, Taylor started dating Dakota Mortensen, who is 33 years old. And that is where things really start to get complicated. Their relationship was intense from the start. People who follow Taylor online could see that this relationship had a lot of highs and a lot of lows. Taylor and Dakota eventually had a child together, a 2-year-old son named True. But the relationship between Taylor and Dakota was anything but stable, and by early 2023 things had gotten very bad between them. On February 17, 2023, Taylor and Dakota got into a major fight at her home in Draper, Utah. The fight was so loud and so intense that neighbors could actually hear it from outside, and they called the police. When officers arrived, they could smell alcohol on Taylor. A body camera video was captured that night, and parts of it were released to the public back in May of 2023. In that video, you can see Taylor being questioned by officers, and you can see her visibly upset and emotional. What happened that night was serious. Taylor was charged with multiple offenses, including aggravated assault, criminal mischief, domestic violence in the presence of a child, and reckless child abuse. She was placed under arrest that night in front of her own home, but here is what happened next. In August of 2023, Taylor entered into what is called a plea in abeyance deal. This is a legal agreement where she pleaded guilty to aggravated assault and the rest of the charges were dismissed. Her sentence was essentially probation. She had to meet with a caseworker regularly, undergo any treatment that was required, and she was not allowed to use drugs or alcohol. That probation period was set to last until August of 2026. And the key part of that agreement was that if she stayed out of trouble and followed all the rules, her record could eventually be reduced to a class A misdemeanor instead of a felony. That was a huge deal for her legally. Now fast forward to 2024 and 2025. Taylor kept building her brand. Her Hulu reality show called The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives premiered on September 6, 2024, and it was a massive hit. The show centered around Taylor and her group of friends. from Mom Talk, and it documented their lives, their drama, and yes, even the 2023 arrest. Body camera footage from that night was actually shown in the very first episode of the show. People watched it, they talked about it, and somehow even after all of that, Taylor's career was still growing. Then in September of 2025, ABC made a very surprising announcement. Taylor Frankie Paul had been chosen as the lead for season 22 of The Bachelorette. This was a truly shocking choice because every single Bachelorette before Taylor had come from a previous season of The Bachelor. Taylor was the very first Bachelorette ever to come from outside the franchise. It was a bold move by Disney and ABC, and it was seen as an attempt to bring new energy and younger viewers to a show that had been struggling with ratings for years. Taylor filmed her entire Bachelorette season, and it was all edited and ready to air. The premiere was scheduled for March 22, 2026. Taylor was doing press appearances and interviews promoting the show. Things seemed to be moving in a positive direction. And then everything fell apart in a matter of hours. On March 19, 2026, TMZ released a video that stopped the internet cold. This video was from that February 2023 incident, but it was not the body camera footage that people had already seen. This was a cell phone video that had apparently been recorded by Dakota himself during the fight, and what was on that video was deeply shocking. The video showed Taylor yelling at Dakota, hitting him, putting him in a headlock, and throwing metal bar stools at him. At one point in the video, you can hear her daughter crying in the background. Dakota can be heard on camera saying, "Look, this is called physical abuse." He also says your daughter is sitting right there. According to a police report obtained by E! News at the time, one of those thrown stools actually hit the child. That detail alone made this video extremely serious and impossible to ignore. The video went viral within minutes, and just hours after TMZ posted it, Disney and ABC made a stunning announcement. They were canceling Taylor Frankie Paul's entire season of The Bachelorette, just 3 days before it was supposed to premiere. A Disney spokesperson said in a statement that in light of the newly released video, they had made the decision not to move forward with the new season at this time. This was completely unprecedented. Never before in the history of The Bachelorette had an entire season been cancelled like this, especially after it had already been fully filmed and edited. ABC also made the decision to air a rerun of American Idol in the show's timeslot instead. And on top of all of that, filming for Season 5 of The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives was also put on pause. Taylor's entire career had effectively been stopped in one single day. Now here is what led to that video coming out in the first place. On that same day, March 19th, Dakota Mortensen filed a petition for a protective order against Taylor in Salt Lake County Court. In that filing, Dakota pointed to a pattern of abuse he claimed Taylor had committed against him. He cited the 2023 incident, and he also cited 2 brand new alleged incidents that had occurred in February of 2026. Specifically, he described what Taylor's attorney later called the truck tussle. According to Dakota's account, Taylor had invited him over to her home in the early morning hours of February 23, 2026. The kids were asleep inside the house. They decided to talk in his truck to avoid waking the children, and according to both of their accounts, things escalated quickly. Dakota drove away with Taylor in the vehicle without her consent. And then the two stories completely diverge. Dakota says Taylor became aggressive and threw things at him inside the truck. Taylor says the complete opposite. She says Dakota grabbed her by the head and slammed it into the dashboard of the truck. She says he also struck her knee and her elbow with his fist. Taylor's attorney showed photos at a custody hearing that showed what appeared to be a bruise on Taylor's forehead and another bruise on her knee. The first photo was taken within hours of the incident and showed visible swelling and discoloration that darkened into a yellowish bruise over the following days. So you have two people, both claiming to be the victim, both filing protective Orders against each other. Taylor filed her own protective order against Dakota on April 7, 2026, just hours before their scheduled custody hearing on that same day. At that hearing, the judge granted Dakota temporary custody of their 2-year-old son Ever. Taylor was allowed only up to 8 hours per week of supervised visitation. That means she cannot be alone with her own child. A paid supervisor or someone approved by the court has to be present. That restriction is in place until their next hearing, which is scheduled for April 30, 2026. Then on April 14, 2026, the Salt Lake County District Attorney's Office made their announcement. No charges will be filed against Taylor Frankie Paul. The DA's office released a statement saying that some of the incidents Dakota reported were more than 2 years old and therefore fell outside the statute of limitations for misdemeanor offenses in Utah. The incidents that were within the time limit either did not rise to the level of criminal offenses or lacked sufficient evidence to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. 2 days later, Draper City prosecutors also announced that no charges would be filed against Dakota either. So neither person is being criminally charged. That does not mean the civil and custody battles are over. Far from it, Taylor responded to the news on social media with a very personal and emotional post. She wrote about going through the ugliest parts of healing and said she would not wish this experience on her worst enemy. She talked about crying on her knees in pain and said she received the call about charges being dropped exactly 7 weeks after everything started on what she called the 7th day. She also revealed on her Instagram stories that she has been diagnosed with PTSD by more than one therapist and said it has likely progressed into complex PTSD. She talked about working on the basics, including eating, movement, rest, and retraining her nervous system. She said she would be sharing her rebuilding process publicly. Dakota also broke his silence. In a statement to a news outlet, he said he had taken a step back from the chaos and that his focus was on his son and creating a stable and healthy environment. He also said he regretted not stepping away from a difficult cycle sooner and that the situation had not been accurately portrayed publicly. His statement was measured and focused on moving forward, but here is what makes this situation legally complicated moving forward. Even though the DA declined to file new criminal charges, Taylor is technically still on probation from her 2023 conviction, and that probation runs until August of 2026. Under Utah law, even without a new criminal conviction, a judge can hold what is called an order to show cause hearing to determine if Taylor violated the terms of her probation through this recent behavior. The standard of proof in a probation violation hearing is much lower than in a criminal trial. Instead of having to prove something beyond a reasonable doubt, the prosecution only needs to show it is more likely than not that a violation occurred. That is called a preponderance of the evidence. So even with no new charges, her probation could still be at risk. And then there is the custody situation, which is a completely separate matter from the criminal side. Family courts in Utah focus on one thing above everything else, and that is the best interest of the children. The judge in Taylor's custody case can consider her mental health diagnosis, her history, her treatment and therapy, and any evidence of volatile behavior. The court also has broad power to order things like drug testing, alcohol monitoring, mandatory therapy compliance, and supervised visitation. Right now, Taylor is already under supervised visitation with her son Ever. The April 30th hearing will be critical in determining what happens next with that arrangement. There is also the question of what happens with Taylor's TV career. The Bachelorette season has been canceled and it is unclear if it will ever air. The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives filming is on pause and nobody knows when or if production will resume. Taylor's entire livelihood as a public figure depends on these shows and on her social media presence. She has already hinted that she plans to be open about her healing process publicly and share her journey with her audience. Whether that is enough to rebuild what has been lost remains to be seen. This case touches on so many important issues that go beyond just celebrity gossip. It touches on domestic violence and how complicated it can be when both parties make allegations against each other. It touches on the statute of limitations and how the timing of when something is reported can completely change the legal outcome. It touches on how social media, viral videos, and public opinion can affect real legal proceedings and real people's lives. And most importantly, it involves children who have no choice but to be caught in the middle of all of this adult conflict. What is clear right now is that this story is nowhere near over. The next court date is April 30th, 2026. Both Taylor and Dakota are expected to appear. The judge will review the competing protective orders and make decisions about custody going forward. Taylor's probation status may also come under review. And with cameras following Taylor's life for television and millions of people watching her on social media, every single move she makes will be scrutinized publicly. For Taylor Frankie Paul, the charges being dropped was described by her as a moment of freedom, but in reality the legal, personal, and professional battles ahead of her are just beginning. She has 3 children who need stability. She has a career that has been derailed. She has a probation period that does not end until August. And she has a custody fight that is going to play out in a Utah courtroom for the foreseeable future. We will continue to bring you every update as this case develops. And as always, if you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, please call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233 or text START to 88788. Help is available. That will do it for today's episode of Scandal presented by Law and Crime. I am your host Sierra Gillespie and I will see you next time.